welcome back. This is the Week 9 edition of the Thursday Night Tailgate. Great to be here. Things are getting very exciting in the Anthracite Football League. Once again, we are on location. Thanks a lot to Jesse Hiles. We're down here at the infamous Sports Zoo, Lansford, PA, just a short punt from the stadium. We know this place well, guys, huh?
Absolutely. Been here a few times. You said a short punt from the stadium. That's one of their famous expressions, but probably the better and more famous one is where no one's ugly at 2 a.m. You gotta love that.
Absolutely. Owner Jesse House, thanks a lot for having us. Always does a ton to support local sports teams, and we really appreciate him offering the Sports Zoo for us to be here tonight. It's a fantastic place, doing great lunches and dinners now. Karen's a fantastic cook, and everything that we've tried on the menu has just been fantastic. Yeah, a lot of people don't know they're doing lunches now. So if you're in the Lansford area, check it out. It's a fantastic place. Things are getting real exciting, real interesting in the AFL. So what we're going to do is first recap last week's action and talk a little bit about what's going on as far as the league goes and the league standings, because it's getting exciting. First, we got Minersville, Thursday night, big win, Carson Long. Now, we talked a little bit about Carson Long early in the year when they played Mahanoy area. Obviously, they're not a team that is at the level that some of these Anthracite or any of the Anthracite League teams for that matter are. With that being said, though, Minersville, they got their first win of the season, so obviously that's huge for them. You know, congratulations to Minersville, Coach Mason and their kids for keep plugging and getting that win. Getting right into it, my hard cold performers of the week come from this game. You know, we've seen some moments from quarterback McBreen, just a sophomore, and Luke Heffron. You know, we talked about him being hurt early in the year. Great to see him back and having the game that he did. McBreen, 8 of 9 passing, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns. We have Luke Heffron, 7 rushes, 121 yards, and he had 2 TD runs, 1 of 10 yards, 1 of 25 yards. So Heffron and McBreen, great job this week. They're my hardcore performers of the week. Might as well get their first win of the season.
Awesome choice. I mean, it really is. You know, Minersville, young team. You know, and you have a couple seniors, and then when they get banged up, you look at it and you're like, you got to feel a little bad for them. And I'm sure Thursday night game, we talked about it last week, just an awesome atmosphere. You know, totally different. It's a new experience for them. You know, I'm sure Friday night they got to relax or go out to see another game, whatever. But you know, I'm glad to see Minersville got a win last week. I don't care who it's against. A win's a win. So
absolutely,
congratulations, Minersville.
I think my favorite stat there is Heffron had a huge game, which we're really happy about because he's a senior, been battling injuries all year long. But he only had 7 carries, so that shows that Minersville didn't run it up. It was 38-0 at one point. The score's a little deceiving, 44-20. But Minersville, who's young and banged up, still subbed pretty liberally in this game. You know, and it could have been a lot worse. It was 38-0. They could have made it worse. They could have ran Heffron all night and got him a career night. But they didn't do that because that's not what you do in sports. But a couple other names to mention. McBreen had a couple touchdown passes. One to Adam Stoppy, who Coach Mason mentioned earlier in the year, is a guy that works really hard. 7-yarder to him, and a 17-yarder to Bryce McSlavich. And you know, that's a good Minersville name, you know, Western Coal Region name there.
And I feel like we've mentioned his name a few times the last couple of weeks. So.
Yep.
Good job, Minersville. Congrats on the first win. They upped their record to 1-7.
Yep.
Moving on, another non-league game, Kutztown and Blue Mountain. Blue Mountain, obviously, we've mentioned numerous times coming into the league next year, and you know, based on size alone, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And you know, they always have good numbers. They always have some depth, and they're going on a run right now. You know, they started off the year a little slow. They come up with a huge win this week against Kutztown, and they got themselves right back into the playoff hunt. Big win, 54-6.
Yeah, you look at Blue Mountain, and you know, like you said, they got numbers every year. They're a bigger school. You know, congratulations to Shane Graspy and Will Bornstein. You know, it's not often that you see the same week. You know, Graspy got 1,000 yards passing, Bornstein got 1,000 yards rushing.
Balance.
Yeah, great to see. And another thing, Coach McCarthy, you talked about this.
2 multi-sport guys.
Well,
they're heck of basketball players too. I always like to throw that in there because sometimes we don't see enough of that.
You know, and coaching baseball, Graspy, he seems like he pitches against us every year. It seems like he's been there 20 years now. But, you know, one thing you don't see often, what you mentioned, there was 3 guys from Blue Mountain that each had 2 interceptions. Bane Kitsock Shane Greenewalt, who we've heard before, and then Marcellius. So that's awesome. You know, the defense getting takeaways. That leads.
That's got to be like one of the only schools in the state that's done that. 3 guys with 2 interceptions each. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Moving on, another non-league game, Lehighton. Lehighton coming into this week, they were 4-3, but waiting for them was East Stroudsburg South, undefeated, the leader in the MVC, and you know Lehighton saw why this past week. Lehighton drops to 4-4, losing to East Stroudsburg South, 34-7.
Yeah, we're Lehighton fans here. We're not gonna lie. We got some friends on the staff, and you know they're local guys. But we said last week we really think they need a signature win, and we were hoping this would be the game. 7-0 East Stroudsburg South, but it wasn't. East Stroudsburg South dominated. The yardage differential was 365 to 212. East Stroudsburg South had 5 different players that scored touchdowns, exploiting Lehighton's normally tough D. That's been their bread and butter all year long. But on Lehighton's side, you know, Tyler Cannon, another touchdown. We mention his name every single week, 32-yard TD run. And the thing that I like the most, and I know we talked about this before, like when the Pittsburgh private team talked about Shendo kids, Ed Christian from East Stroudsburg South said, you know, we're going to really miss Lehighton in the MVC next year. Because when we went to play against them all the time, they always just had tough kids. And when you played Lehighton, you knew you were going to get hit. You know, and that was just kind of cool to see that from a legendary coach, a guy that's been there forever. And, you know, but unfortunately, again, like I said, they just came up short in this game.
Sounds like they're going to fit in pretty good in the AFL.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of kids that they're, you know, you got an opposing coach talking like that. Sounds like they're going to fit in pretty well.
Yep.
Yeah, and we all know from experience that you know that's how Lehighton is. It's always going to be a game. You're always going to get hit, and you know, as far as the records go, it kind of doesn't mean a whole lot when you go up against Lehighton because you're in for a game.
Let's be honest. Lehighton people have told us their biggest games of the year, the last several years, weren't in the MVC. They were the Marian first week, at the Valley third week, Jim Stewart week 10. You know, so them coming over is going to create a lot of nice rivalries.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be fun.
And Tamaqua. I forgot Tamaqua.
Right.
Okay, next we have, boy, a team that's just rolling right now. Marian and Shendo. Marian gets a big win, 52-20. Marian, earlier in the year, we talked a lot about their defense. You know, we mentioned Lucas Damien and a lot of the guys that they had coming back, and we mentioned Lucas as being one of the best defensive players in the league. Offensively, they struggled. They struggled to start, but boy, once they started their offense rolling, you know, everything else kind of fell into place, and Marian wins their 5th game in a row. It's a big win, 52-20 over Shenandoah. Shenandoah, a couple guys that had nice performances as well. Ian McCall, you know, we mentioned him a couple times. You know, it's funny how things progress as the year goes. You know, early in the year we didn't know if it was going to be him or his quarterback. McCall has stepped into that role nicely, and he threw for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, you know, the numbers that he's putting up on a weekly basis are impressive. It's not the type of numbers you see a lot. You know, you see it more these days in high school, but, you know, 186 yards and 2 TDs, very impressive for Ian McCall. And Shai Avershinsky, 66-yard touchdown reception, and Kane Herb had a 30-yard touchdown reception as well. You know, Shenandoah, like we said, they got some tough kids, they got some playmakers. Marian's got it rolling right now.
Yeah, Marian has it rolling. I think it all starts with Dean Richards. I don't think people can say enough about the job he's done taking over for, you know, Snur going down and then Damien going down. You know, he's a 3rd quarterback.
Yep.
And they bring the 3rd quarterback in, and he's doing great. He's very efficient, 3 of 6 for over 100 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and then he also had a touchdown rushing. And then there's another kid who, you know, you see his name in the paper every week, and we really haven't mentioned him much, and that was Nick Sully. And he had 95 yards rushing and 2 more touchdowns. So some kids really stepping up here when some of the leaders of Marian have gone down, and it seems like a huge team effort that has been carrying them in this win streak right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? Going back to Marian, got it rolling offensively, kind of fitting at the Halloween time of year. We noticed a little thing last week. Lucky number 13. They scored 13 points in each of the four quarters, you know, for their 52. Right? We just thought it was pretty interesting to see that. But the real show was the Augusti brothers. You know, Anthony Augusti's been tough all year long. We've been talking about him. He's a great football player. the other day. You know, statistically, Anthony had 96 yards rushing and a TD. But his younger brother Nico, who made a lot of waves last year in the track and field. You know, a state level sprinter, got out to states for the 200 and pretty impressive times. But now, you know, making his mark on the football field. 3 TDs the other day, over 100 yards receiving. Coach Dukoski said about him that initially he was an athlete trying to play football, and now he's a football player, you know, who's a great athlete. And I just thought that's a pretty neat way to look at his transition into becoming one of the guys we're talking about here.
Yeah, and you know, and Anthony Gusty, I think when you look at the paper and you see the top performers in the league, numbers-wise, his name doesn't always jump out at you. But boy, when you go and watch him play, he's without a doubt one of the best players in the league. You know, he's in that category.
Multi-sport athlete too.
Another multi-sport athlete, absolutely. Noticing a trend here, which I love to see. So, Marian, boy, putting themselves in good position, which we'll get to a little later. Big win over Shendo, 52-20. Moving on, the game that I was fortunate enough to go check out on Friday night, Tamaqua at Panther Valley. Tamaqua PV, always a huge rivalry, and it was very interesting. First, it was a tale of two halves. You know, the first half, PV, it was the best first half. It was the best half of football. I've seen them play all year. I got to see them a few times, and they had a 14-6 lead. You were wondering if Tamaqua was eventually going to wear them down, and if PV can hold tight, and kind of started to happen a little bit in the second half, and you know, some of Tamaqua's playmakers came to the forefront and pulled away, but it was a tale of two halves. Tamaqua was down 14-6 at halftime, but boy, they came out in the second half rolling, and they ended up pulling away, winning 32-14.
Yeah, and I was with you there, and it was great to be in that environment. A great crowd. I'll tell you what, Panther Valley's only got a couple wins, but it was a home game for them, and you had to be impressed with the crowd too.
Absolutely.
Good park, first of all. It took us forever to park. And then you get in there and
not just the crowd, the atmosphere as well.
Oh yeah.
Because there are times you know, you could go to somebobody's games and there could be a crowd and everybody's sitting on their hands. But boy, the atmosphere is great.
It was. Every play was contested. The crowd cheered on each side whenever appropriate, and Tamaqua's band did a great job at halftime. It was just a great football night. And for us as Panther Valley guys, we were excited. You know, at halftime they're going in with the lead. Richard Nace and Kyle Ferryman, who we talked about all year long, were doing a great job. One guy that really stood out to me, Jacob Suvig.
Absolutely.
Jake had a real nice day. At one point, he returned a kickoff return for 46 yards, which set up a Nace TD. I believe on the very next play, he busted for like 30 yards. He had multiple tackles on the edge there at cornerback.
And you know, that's one thing that jumped out at me about Suvig this week. You know, we were wondering, can PV slow down Tamaqua, especially their running game with some of those playmakers, and specifically in the first half, Suvig just played fantastic on the defensive end.
Yeah, and some of them were in space out there against one of the best running backs in the league, Tyler Hope, and then he had a big interception there, and I was just impressed with him, which brings me kind of to this point where, you know, I looked at the stats the next day, and Panther Valley had 31 rushes. And 30 of them were by Nace and Ferryman. And we said last week they got to start getting some more guys involved, not just for next year, because those guys are both seniors and moving on, but to make it a little tougher to prepare for them. You know, North Schuylkill's a great defensive team, and that's who they play next week. If we limit it just to those two guys, you know, it's going to be kind of easy to prepare for them. So hopefully right now, we're a short punt from the field. Hopefully they're up there right now practicing on ways to get Mahalik involved and Suvag now involved, who had a great game.
How about
and maybe
He had a big
CTO.
start of the year.
Absolutely. Some of these guys, Schubeck, you know, I mean, he's in that backfield. You know, maybe we'll see a little different approach because North Schuylkill's so good defensively, it can't be those two guys, even though they're exceptional. And speaking of exceptional, Kyle Ferryman may or may not have gone over 1,000 yards for the season.
Pretty darn close.
Pretty darn close. Pretty darn 3 yards shy, depending upon which paper count you'll read. But you know, they're exceptional. But hopefully we work a little bit more into this.
Now, Tamaqua, boy, I mean, they have some players and they got some real nice pieces.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the kids that they had, and you know, I know Hope didn't have any of his big runs like he had last week against Haven, but he still had 28 carries for 197 and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, it didn't look at it kind of shocking when you looked in the paper and you saw what he had.
I was surprised.
You know, because they had him bottled up. You know, early in the game they had his number. You know, first half he didn't do much. Second half he got going. You know, and you could see PV got worn down. Tamaqua had a huge size advantage, and they just wore down PV. But I mean, that's giving credit to Tamaqua. You know, working hard in the weight room, and that's when games are won. Third and fourth quarter, you get out there and you wear teams down. Edmonds on the other hand, he had over 100 yards passing again, touchdown to the tight end Adam Franz, and then Zach Zuccotti had another two big catches in the game for 64 yards. So some real nice kids stepping up for Tamaqua. They've had some real nice wins, and right now they're keeping themselves in contention here for a playoff spot somewhere.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, next. Haven, Jim Thorpe. And now, coming into the game, Jim Thorpe, they control their destiny. And they still do. But if they got to win, they're league champs. They're league champs and they're solo league champs. Haven getting healthy. And they're a team that right now, I don't think you want to see, on the other side of the ball. Haven really played a complete game. They beat Jim Thorpe 30-12, which kind of is throwing the anthracite standings and the anthracite championship and all the possibilities into a tizzy, which we'll get to.
We're going to try to get to.
But Haven, big win.
Yeah, they earlier in the year we talked about their offensive line. Their big, strong offensive line. I remember Coach Davis had some inside information about how every kid gained like 50 to 70 yards or 50 to 70 pounds on the bench and so on and so forth. And we never got to see them gel because we always talk about the skill kids who are injured, but they had some injured linemen too. And this week the line really came to play, and from what Coach Farr said, that was the difference. Not only that, Will Casella, week in and week out,
Yep.
We talked about him, 20 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. But the big difference this week, and the Black Diamond performance of the week, was from Ryan Fink. Finally back to just about 100% healthy. And a healthy Ryan Fink not only gives you a great quarterback, not only takes the workload off of Casella. Casella didn't have to carry it 30 times this week. He only carried it 20. Not only gives you that big play ability, not only the leadership ability, defensive side of the ball, he does all those things. And this week was no different. Okay, 6 completions for 85 yards, one of them a TD to Mike Ferrio. And I saw that in the highlights, Mike. They talked about you getting some Division I looks this year. It was pretty impressive to see that big guy run down the sidelines like that. And we got a chance to meet him earlier there. Just a great young man. But Fink, another 92 yards rushing, including 2 TDs. A big interception late in the game to seal the win. And a great choice this week for Black Diamond performance of the week. Because Ryan Fink, I'm sure Coach Farr was glad to have you back. And we as football fans are glad to have you back too. It was a great performance and maybe the biggest game of the week.
Yep, big players make big plays in big games. Yep. We said that last weekend. Boy, I think huge plays in a huge game. I mean, that game was as big as it gets.
Yeah, and you look at a kid who every week in and week out, is RS2. And he had another solid game. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards on the ground. But when you look at it, it seemed like Haven really controlled everyone else. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't even say they didn't control Saunders. See, Saunders broke two pretty nice sized plays for them. Yeah. But for the most part, they controlled them. And you read Coach Farr's article in the paper, he said, we knew we couldn't match their speed, so we basically told our D linemen, just get into your guys, hold them, and wait for them. Yep. Don't run upfield to create gaps. And hey, that's an awesome coaching move right there.
That's very impressive.
And
very impressive.
You look at the best friend is just ball control for a defense. Mm-hmm. Haven ran 60 compared to 45 plays for Thorpe. And if you're going to stop Thorpe, you got to keep him off the field. Yep. And my Coal Cracker defensive players of the week, Nate Kramer and Alec Bailey. I talked to Coach Farr, he said those kids had phenomenal games. And they really did, as a defensive unit. Those guys are a huge part of it. They did what pretty much no one else has done, and that has, they really slowed down and helped Jim Thorpe down, especially at Jim Thorpe. Yep. At Jim Thorpe this year, they've been lights out.
They really did. And Saunders made some plays, but a great player like Zach's going to do that. Everyone's in the right position. Everyone's doing exactly what they're supposed to do. But a great player like that's going to make a few plays. But they limited them. They limited them, and other than that, they pretty much shut them down.
Yes. So yeah, JT, they still control their own destiny. We'll get to that.
But you don't need to worry.
But hey, that's a little bit of pressure now.
Made it a little bit more interesting too.
That's good for the show.
Good. Great for ratings. Great for ratings.
All right, brings us out to our next one. Monty area, North Schuylkill. I think everyone knew that this was going to be interesting. This is a big game, big implications. How's Monterey going to respond after their first league loss against Jim Thorpe the previous week? How's North Schuylkill going to respond after that loss to Mount Carmel, which not a league loss, but nonetheless was a heartbreaker for them. And North Schuylkill really takes care of business. They beat Monterey 31-7. A couple things. First of all, this is the second week in a row now that Monterey, after their great start, their video game-like numbers that we talked about, leading the state in rushing and scoring and all that. 2 games in a row, Monterey doesn't have an offensive TD. You're starting to see more guys in the box, trying to force them to throw the ball a little bit. And North Schuylkill's defense, 4 turnovers. 4 takeaways, as you like to say, Coach Davis. Yeah. They took it away 4 times, and the first team unit in North Schuylkill only gave up 59 yards, which against Monterey's offense is extremely impressive. So, boy, this is really throwing a wrench into everything right now. So, what do you guys make of this game?
First and foremost, I got to stop predicting games because I told my good friend Bob Ford with the Times News their weekly picks. He picked Mahanoy and everyone else picked North Schuylkill, and I said, Bob, you're going to pick up a game on everyone because Mahanoy's going to win this game. so that's the first thing I got to take from this game is that I'm glad I don't gamble in real life here with money. But from what I understand and from the people we talked to, it all came down to the guys up front. Okay, and I want to read some names here. Hopefully I get pronunciations right. The offensive line of North Schuylkill, Jordan Drizak, C.J. Steinhilber, Dane Tarantelli, Nate Gadinsky, and Tyler Briel. Okay, the offensive line apparently dominated up front against Mahanoy's big defensive line front. We talked about them, and obviously maybe the best defensive player or one of the best players in the league, Tyler Cavinas, was held in check for most parts. But then on the other side, the front 8 of North Schuylkill did the same thing, holding Mike, I was ready to say Mike Gavel, but holding Dylan May. That's the second time I did that this year. I'm sorry. Holding him to just 14 yards rushing. Derek Reese, Nate Gadinsky again, Gino Chicatano. There's always a Chicatano up that way, whether it's North Schuylkill or Mount Carmel. Cody Moore, Tom Gallagher, Matt Smarkanik, Major Jordan, and Garrett Grove. All those guys, the front 8, just controlling the game. And I don't know, anything stick out to you guys when I mention all those names? Offensive line and defense up front?
One name that was repeated twice. That was it. And that was Gadinsky.
That's very impressive for a 2A school to have that type of depth where they have that many linemen that are able to go one way. The second half, that's huge.
Yeah, that's just got to wear teams down. I mean, if you're anywhere in the game, that's going to take over, and that's going to make a huge difference if you have depth.
Yeah,
and you can see that on the teams that don't have depth.
And it's smart.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a kid that can play, and now you have the choice as a coach. You can get him in on the offensive side, and now maybe your stud defensive tackle. You could give him a break on one side of the ball. And North Schuylkill obviously made it work for them this past week. Very impressive. North Schuylkill with the big win, 31-7, which is going to take us to our Anthracite Football League standings. We're going to talk a little bit about where we stand right now and what some of the scenarios are, because things are getting interesting. Coming into last week, Jim Thorpe controlled their own destiny, which they still obviously do. Jim Thorpe, coming into the week with 2 league games left, needed to win 1 to have sole possession of the Anthracite Football League Championship for 2013. This week, Haven beat Jim Thorpe, so now Jim Thorpe is in a must-win situation to get sole possession. However, they did lock up a share.
Right.
So Jim Thorpe will...
We don't want to share.
They don't want to share.
No.
Well, you're absolutely right. Right now, they don't want to share. Jim Thorpe's going to be on that plaque. They want it to be just them.
Not when you were this close last week, too. Like, you get a win last week, that's yours.
You don't want that font to be smaller because there's other names behind it.
Right. And
you want Jim Thorpe written.
And there could be a field. There could be a field.
There could be a field.
All right, so let's take a look at this. Right now, league standings. We have Jim Thorpe, and these are league records. Jim Thorpe at 6-1, and they have Marian and Lehighton left. Lehighton non-league. We have Haven at 5-2. And they have Monty left in the league. We have North Schuylkill at 5-2 with PV left in the league. We have Monterey at 4-2 with Haven left in the league. And we have Marian at 4-2 with Jim Thorpe left in the league. So, if Jim Thorpe beats Marian, they are sole Anthracite Football League 2013 champs.
Yes.
Done.
And our ratings might go down next week as a result, because the intrigue will be gone, at least for the league.
Right, but now we're in week 9, and we have 3 games, 6 teams playing in those 3 games, obviously, that have a huge impact on the possible championship. Should Marian continue their role and beat Jim Thorpe, we're looking at a couple possibilities here. Now, that would drop Jim Thorpe to 2 league losses.
Yes.
Marian would also have 2 league losses. They would then also control their own destiny.
Yes, Marian, right, besides Jim Thorpe controlling their own destiny. Jim Thorpe wins, they're the champs.
Yes.
Marian is the other team that controls their own destiny.
Yes.
Because if they win and then they beat Tamaqua week 10, then they are guaranteed a share.
Because they would also only have 2 league losses.
Correct.
In addition to Jim Thorpe.
Correct.
And here's something you're not going to hear too often. There are going to be a lot of Marian fans this week in places like North Schuylkill, in places like Mahanoy area, Schuylkill Haven, you know, because they want to keep their title hopes alive, and it all hinges upon a Marian win.
Yes, absolutely. Now we're looking at some of these other games coming up this week. Mahanoy, Haven.
Huge game.
This is huge. Both teams 2 league losses. So both of these teams are huge Marian fans Friday night, first of all. They want Marian to beat Jim Thorpe. And then the winner of that game has a shot at a share of the title. Haven would lock up a share if they win because their last game of the season against Blue Mountain is non-league.
Yep.
Mahanoy would still only have 2 league losses if they win, and then they would have to beat
Shendo.
which
is a huge rival game.
huge rival. They're going to be favored. They're all right, but it's Mahanoy Shendo.
Shendo has beaten them that week 10 the last few times, you know, through the years. Not last year, last year, and even in the years when Mahanoy made those playoff runs.
Oh yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that your Mahanoy was a huge favorite.
Yep.
And had a shot to go to districts, and Haven knocked
They had to
them
settle
down.
for Eastern Conference.
Shendo knocked them
Yeah,
down.
they settled for
Shendo, I'm
Eastern
sorry,
Conference, and Shendo got a district game out of it the one year.
Yep.
Yep.
So that certainly, you got a lot of interesting things at play here, but it all hinges on the Jim Thorpe Marian game. Jim Thorpe takes care of business; they're sole league champs.
Yep.
If Marian's able to continue their role and they are able to beat Jim Thorpe, now we're looking at Jim Thorpe with a share. We're looking at Marian with a share if they beat Tamaqua. We're looking at
North Schuylkill.
North Schuylkill.
If they beat
If they beat PV, they would get a share. So we're looking at a possibility of 3,
And then the winner of Haven Mahanoy possibly have a
possibly
share.
4.
possibly 4.
3, maybe 4, if Marian wins.
The A9 probably never envisioned a tiebreaker scenario, or a 4-way tie.
No, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Now, if upsets would happen, and it ended up in a 2-way tie, which
Yeah.
you look at all these games, and a 2-way tie is not a likely scenario, but it would occur if you had some upsets. If you had a Shendo or a PV or Minersville, if you had some of these teams pull off an upset of one of these teams we're talking about.
And they're due. Somebody's due for an upset.
I keep waiting for, I keep thinking that PV or Shendo, because of their offensive firepower, I keep thinking they're going to upset somebody.
Yeah.
I really do. If that would happen, and you'd have a 2-team tie, head-to-head.
Yep.
Easy enough, right?
Right.
So that's what we got.
We
So
can't have a 3, I think, right? The way we figured it?
Well, it could be a 3.
Oh, there still could? Okay,
Yeah.
my bad.
So we can have sole champs, or a 2-way tie, highly unlikely. Or a 3 or a 4-way tie, which would be a split
Yep.
championship.
It's a lot of sharing going on.
That is a lot of sharing. I hope that makes sense. I hope we at least cleared it up a little bit, because we've been getting a lot of people asking about these possible scenarios, and we wanted to make that a point this week to talk about it. We got 2 weeks left. We got a lot of meaningful games. We got a lot of teams. I mean, you look at the Anthracite League right now. There are only 4 teams that don't have a shot.
And it's
at
week
the
9.
championship.
And it's week 9.
That's pretty cool, actually.
That's unbelievable.
Not to pat ourselves on the back, but we predicted this earlier in the year, if you remember. We talked about the league champion most likely having a loss or 2, and a good chance of being multiple champions this year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Coach McGarrell, you actually, I believe, said that the league champ might have 2 losses, which, I have to give you credit for that, because after busting you for that, some of your preseason picks and all your Jim Thorpe picks, I think we need to...
Finally, after week 9, I get
credit where credit's due. You said the league champ may have 2 losses, and boy, all it's going to take is one win by Marian over Thorpe, and that's where we're at.
Yep.
So those are the MSA Football League scenarios. Again, we're at the infamous Sports Zoo, Lansford, PA, where nobody's ugly at 2 a.m., serving great lunches and dinners right now. Thanks for having us. What we're going to do is wrap things up, and we will be back with the Week 9 preview and also
And
talk a
some
little bit
district.
about district possibilities.